Hey, I'm so happy that you agreed to meet here. It's really awesome. I totally get it. You're going through a lot, and it can be completely overwhelming. But that's all the more reason why it's important to give yourself time to spend some time with someone who gets it. And believe me, I've been right there in your shoes before. It's terrifying and exhausting, and you feel like nothing makes sense anymore. You had this blueprint in your head. Maybe it was something that you cobbled together from images and movies and television shows. I mean, we all grew up glued to the boob tube, right? And it didn't exactly have the most diverse array of protagonists in stories. All the men are supposed to be broad-shouldered, narrow-waisted, walking triangles, all manly and tough, and the ladies are supposed to be hourglasses, all curvy and clever. And if you don't fit into one of those molds, if you don't want the house with the white picket fence, if you don't want the 9-to-5 job, then suddenly you're the freak. You're the outcast, the weirdo. Again, I get it. Really, I do. I remember when I was younger, I sat on the floor listening to my foster parents in the other room talk about me. I believed that that they cared about me and that they understood, but they couldn't wrap their heads around the real me. If I'm honest, I really couldn't understand the real me either. And then they called the mutant and control hotline people. Instead of a social worker coming over to help, I got a walking 2-story box of bolts called a sentinel. Luckily, I'd already hit the road. I always was a bit of a mall rat, so I went to the mall to try to get my bearings. Figured I'd hang out in the arcade, lose myself in a few games. But Mr. Tall, Dark, and Robotic managed to find me. I don't know where I would be now if it wasn't for Stormy and Rogue. I guess I got lucky. They were at the mall too. They stepped in, took down that thing, and brought me to Professor X's school for gifted youngsters. Gifted. It felt like such a backhanded compliment at the time. But I can see things differently now. So don't think of this as me interviewing you for the X-Men. Just think of this as someone who's been right where you're standing, giving you an ear to listen to your story, and hopefully giving you the reassurance that, as crazy as it sounds, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not a freak. You're not damaged or broken. You don't need to be fixed. You don't need to conform. You're changing, yes. And transformation can be terrifying, because even when you remove all of that crap that movies and TV have a way of shoveling into our heads, the images of what it's like to be a man or a woman, if you set all that aside, we're just as good at torturing ourselves. We have a way of creating a blueprint of how we think our life's going to go. And it's great to have plans and dreams. But there's a difference between aspirations and the building blocks of who we are. We've got some element of control over our dreams, of what we can try to make for ourselves. But when it comes to what we make of ourselves, that's an entirely different story. And that's where it can get really scary. It's like going through puberty all over again. Totally grody to the max, right? You're changing in ways that you weren't prepared for. Your body doesn't feel like the one that you're supposed to have. Whether you want to call it a diagnosis or a moment of clarity, a revelation, a coming out. Either way, whatever prompted this, you now find that the person that you thought you were going to be and the person who you really are no longer line up. They're no longer the same. But our minds love patterns. They love the idea of normalcy. At least that's what the professor says. So we fight against this change. We fight against the reality that we're becoming someone different than our original blueprint. And whether that feels like you're broken, trying to fit yourself into a mold that's too small, or whether it feels like you're somehow a freak for not lining up with that template that you laid out for yourself before. The truth is that you're so much more than those ideas that you had when you were younger. I mean, for real, think about it. You were just a kid. How could you possibly know everything that was going to happen to you? How could you possibly factor in the way that your life might change? And I know it can be easy to mislabel change as a bad thing. Because again, we love things to be nice and neat and static. But the world's beautiful. The world's always growing, evolving. And so are we. The people who refuse to change, most of them are in the older generation. They've been a certain way for so long that they can't stand the fact that things are different than they were when they were young. They can't stand the idea that we're not conforming to their worldview. And it can be hard not to have their voices echo in our heads, have us feel like we're the problem. But we're not. We are not damaged. We're not freaks. We're not misfits. We're not the ones who don't belong. We are figuring out our place in the world. A world that's changing around us almost as fast as if we were flipping through the channels on the TV. I'm sure I sound like I've got it all together. And maybe I do better than I did when I was your age. But I'm still struggling. But I'm where I am. I'm able to be who I am because of the people who told me that it's okay to be different. It's okay to embrace this change. Of everyone at Professor Xavier's school, I guess I'm closest to Wolvie. We've sort of got I guess you'd call it a grumpy old man, youthful ward sort of situation going on here. Not quite parent and child, but he'd tell you that he's the best at what he does, and what he does isn't pretty. What with his adamantium claws, and that berserker rage of his. But when you really stop and look at it, that's not his greatest strength. No, his true power is his healing ability and how he chooses to use it. Despite being, or at least having the potential to be, a walking blender, I can only count the number of times that he's been out there taking down enemies on a single hand. Whereas I can count the number of times that he's been out there drawing fire for the rest of the team. I can count that in the dozens and dozens. Because that's what he does best. He takes the pain. Because, like all those who have experienced profound suffering, he knows that that pain is something that's so difficult to go through that he's willing to do anything to try to protect others from having to go through it. Honestly, he's healed from physical damage that I can barely even imagine, and psychological damage that I don't even want to think about. His healing factor helps him with the physical, but the mental, the psychological, he's healed from that, I guess, because he is old and kind, kinder than his gruff exterior would let on, and older than he looks with that regeneration ability of his, keeping him young. He's been through it. So much of it. And that's what he does for the team, is try to save us from having to go through it as well. That's the example that he set, that I'm trying to follow here with you. I had to go through a lot of this alone before I found my family. But the world's different now. When I grew up in the 90s, all you had was the town you grew up in. Maybe if you had a friend in another state, you might call them occasionally, but it felt like they were a world away. But now, being close to someone who's across the country is as easy as being close to a friend who's down the street. We can connect with people across continents and time zones. And so we don't have to be alone anymore. We can see that we aren't that one freak in our hometown, the one who doesn't fit in. We can see that there's an entire community of people just like us, each different in their own way, trying to figure out the them that they truly are, as opposed to the them that they feel like they were supposed to be. And there's power in numbers. Not just because we can be there for each other, but because it can help to counteract the narrative that we're alone and that we're wrong. Believe me when I say that regardless of whether this was a diagnosis or a coming out, this transformation, this paradigm shift from who you were to who you are is beautiful. And you'll be able to get through it. It will make you stronger. Even with the physical struggles that it will add. Because our minds are not too dissimilar from our bodies when it comes to the way that they grow stronger. Difficulty, challenges are like pushing through weights. Every difficult day that you have, every challenge that you overcome, no matter how difficult it was, no matter how much it took out of you, that will make you stronger, will bring you closer to being able to be the beautiful person that you are. Each step will become easier, especially if you let yourself feel the support of those who are going through the same thing. And while I hope that they've already found you the same way that Storm and Rogue found me, if they haven't, then you owe it to yourself to use our new tools. Use the internet to seek out communities of people like you so that you can see that there's nothing wrong with who you are. You are extraordinary.